So let's imagine for a second, you're traveling to a brand new place, and when you get there, you realize they have some amazing roads. And you think to yourself, man, I'd really love to ride a motorcycle here. Well, Austin Rothbard may be able to help you out with that. See, Austin's the guy who founded Twisted Road, which he calls the Airbnb of motorcycles. It's where you can rent all kinds of bikes in all kinds of places across the country. Or you can list your own bike for rent. So no matter if you're headed to Portland, Maine, Honolulu, Hawaii, or somewhere in between, you can experience it on two wheels. Even though he started riding less than a decade ago, Austin's more than made up for it in mileage. Whether he's bombing around the Chicagoland area all weekend, heading from Denver to Las Vegas for work, hitting up the Blue Ridge Parkway, or cruising the Pacific Coast Highway. And he's got plenty more places on his list. The really cool thing that Austin's learned from starting Twisted Road is that you can find great motorcycle roads just about anywhere. So instead of wondering how to get your bike to your next adventure, you just have to decide what your next adventure is going to be. This is Austin Rothbard. I'm your host, Mark Long, and you're listening to Driven to Ride. Austin Rothbard, you're on Driven to Ride. How are you, sir?
Great. I'm doing well. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Good, man. Good. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you coming all the way down from the northern suburbs.
Right. It's, of course, such a long journey.
Yeah. So kind of cool. We're both based in the Chicago suburbs.
Yeah.
You know, a little bit before you said you're not originally from here, though.
Right. No, I grew up in the Northeast U.S., and then I've moved around a bunch, but moved into the Chicago area in 2000.
Okay, cool. So, I'm guessing have you been riding motorcycles that whole time?
I've not. I just started riding like 8 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I used to live in kind of the foothills of the San Bernardino Mountains, and I used to work up in the high desert. And every day to get to work, I would drive like 45 or 50 minutes up through this mountain pass where the elevation actually increased by 1,000 feet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As I was driving. And in hindsight, like now, I wish I was riding, because that's a really cool, beautiful, beautiful ride.
Yeah,
if you're on two wheels. But I only started riding about 8 years ago. And about a year after that, I was traveling with my family, and I was in the Grand Canyon. I was like, man, I wish I had my bike. And those 6 words I kept saying, like in different situations.
Yeah.
And finally, I'm like, I can solve this issue. Like, so I'd only been riding for like a year when I started this company.
Okay. Yeah. And let's start at the beginning there.
Yeah.
What do most people know you for? Kind of what's your claim to fame in the motorcycle world?
Well, I started a company called Twisted Road, and our company is a motorcycle rental company, and we connect motorcycle riders with motorcycle owners so they can rent and ride. And so if you back up for a second, we're just like Airbnb, but instead of renting somebody's house, you'd rent their motorcycle.
Okay.
We've got about 4,000 or 5,000 bikes all over the country.
Wow. Okay. So national, international, just in the U.S.?
Just in the U.S. for now.
Okay.
We've had plans to grow internationally since I started, but honestly, it's a hard thing to do because of the different insurance requirements all around the world.
Sure. Well, and so you said you started this company from scratch.
Yeah, I did. And my experience is not tech at all.
Okay.
And it's not insurance at all. It's not startups. I worked in corporate America for 20 years. And the last few jobs I had were running businesses. The businesses were as small as 20 million and as high as big as $500 million in annual revenue. But when I started this, I mean, I'd never run anything with zero, and with no employees. Like I'm used to running bigger companies. Mm-hmm. So this was a big change for me. Sure.
So what kind of drove you to start Twisted Road?
Well, I've always been thinking that I wanted to start my own business.
Okay.
And that's as long as I can remember. My mother actually tells me about how this one friend of the family's, I remember she said to me, you looked at this guy and you said, I want to do what he does. I want to have my own business. And it's funny, she just recounted that story to me recently. And as she started telling me, I actually knew exactly who she was talking about. I remember that conversation. I was probably like 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
It was a while ago. So it's always been kind of an interest of mine to do something entrepreneurial, but the timing didn't really work out until recently. And when I came up with this idea, I had 3 things that were going for me. I had some money saved up. I had a lot of experience on how to run businesses. And then I also had a really good idea that I knew would work.
Cool. Yeah. So what, like, you're talking about how you said you wish you hadn't had your bike in all these different situations. Is that kind of the idea that sparked it?
Yeah, it is. When I was in the Grand Canyon, I really wanted to ride. It was just gorgeous. And I wanted to be on two wheels. And I looked online for a rental, and the closest thing was 2 hours away, and it was a big bagger, and it was like $200 a day.
Yeah.
And the problems with that were it was 2 hours away, $200 a day, and a big bagger. Like I was riding a small standard bike, and never been on something like that.
Right.
And
yeah. It's a big jump going from a small bike to a big bike like that.
Yeah. And then what happened was, over time, I kept wanting to ride. I mean, I was at my mother-in-law's once in North Carolina, and I'm like, man, I'd love to ride the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Oh, for sure.
And there was no rentals there. I went into a few motorcycle dealerships. They're all saying the same thing. We don't do rentals. And finally I said, screw it. I'll just buy a bike. Let me go on Craigslist and buy something and stick it in her garage. And when I'm here, I can go ride. Get something really cheap, $1,000 or something.
Yeah, for sure.
And when I went on Craigslist, there were 952 motorcycles for sale by owner in the Greensboro, North Carolina area. And I'm like, okay, these bikes aren't being ridden. Maybe I can solve two problems.
Okay.
So that's kind of the genesis of it all.
Cool. And you said, how long has it been going on for?
I started the company in early 2017. We went live at the very, very end of 2017. So you could say we've been live for about 6 years now.
Okay. And then you said you've been riding for 8 years. So really you only had 2 years of riding under your belt when you started the company.
I didn't have much riding at all under my belt.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's switch gears. And how did you get into riding? I mean, obviously you started as an adult then.
Yeah. A friend of mine started riding, and I remember I really admired him a lot. And I grew up in a house where you don't ride motorcycles. Like that was just my mom. Like no one's getting on a motorcycle in this house. People who do that are crazy. You're going to get hurt. You're going to kill yourself. Like it was everything stereotypical.
Yeah. And
when this friend of mine got a bike, I thought I had a I don't remember what the name of it is, but it'll come back to me later. But there's a disconnect in your mind when your mind can't hold two different beliefs at the same time.
Cognitive dissonance.
Sure. Cognitive dissonance. Yeah. So cognitive dissonance. And I'm like, okay, so first of all, if all motorcycle riders are crazy and risky and stupid, and then I've got a friend who I admire and respect and is really smart.
Yeah.
Either he's really stupid and risky, or what I had grown up with is wrong. One or the other. And I realized pretty quickly that it was, I'd grown up believing things that just weren't true. So then I thought, maybe I'll just do some research. I started reading a lot online about the community, and I thought it was really cool. I learned about all sorts of different bikes. And then I thought maybe I'll just take a class and see what it's like.
Sure.
No real intention of buying anything. And loved it. I mean, I got on and took this class out by the United Center in the parking lot. And it was just like, I loved it. I just loved the feeling of it. And then, got my endorsement, got a bike, I think like that day or the next day or something.
Really?
Yeah.
So it was like just 0 to 60.
Yeah.
Wow. So then once you threw a leg over that bike, you were hooked.
I was really hooked, and I would spend a lot of time riding. So like, I remember getting up early and being really excited, like a kid on Christmas. And like, it's 6 o'clock in the morning and it's a Saturday, and all I wanted to do was ride. So I'd hop on my bike and I'd go riding for like 8 hours. I'd ride down to Chicago, down the lake.
Wow.
Just like everywhere, I'd ride up to Wisconsin. I'd ride the farm roads. I loved it. It was just like, it was a feeling I'd never had before where, you know the feeling, you're isolated. You can have time to think. No one's bothering you. You're out in the environment. It was just, it blew me away.
Yeah. It's really, I mean, I don't need to tell you, but it's kind of a visceral feeling that it's just you and the outdoors kind of in the machine.
Yeah. And if you go back and like think a little bit about my background and the other activities I've enjoyed doing in my life, I was sailing when I was a kid.
Oh, no way. Okay.
And then after I graduated from college, I learned how to fly a plane.
Oh, wow.
So I did that for a few years.
Yeah.
And like, they're all the same,
Yeah.
They're all movement outside, a very individual activity.
Sure.
But with your thoughts, there's no phone, there's nothing bothering you. You're just kind of in nature and being present.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're all very similar.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So that's
it's
super
just
cool.
You're moving, like I love a good road trip. in a car or on a bike. I love it. And so like this, in a week or two, my family, my kids and I are driving out to my mother-in-law's and we're driving, you know, she's in North Carolina. It's like whatever, a 14 or 15 hour drive.
Yeah.
And like, I love it. Just get up, you pack the car up, get in, you put a podcast on and just relax. It's a great way to unwind for me. I really enjoy it.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up another interesting point about, you know, out west where it's like all these amazing, crazy roads, you know, Grand Canyon, we're talking about the Mountain West or whatever, but being here in the Chicago suburbs and in the Midwest, I mean, you can be in the city in an hour on Lakeshore Drive. Yeah. You can be in Wisconsin in an hour, you know, in the farm roads and stuff like that. And so it really is kind of a special place to be in the Midwest with a motorcycle. I think a lot of people maybe discount that, but there's a lot of cool roads you can find.
Yeah, there are. In fact, I took my team a few years ago to the Driftless area of Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So we're a dispersed team. Like when I started the company, it was just me for the first 2 years. And then after that, I hired some people. And at the time when I hired them, you know, nobody really wanted an office. And we just, and I didn't want to spend the money and I didn't want to commute. So I'm like, let's just work from our homes. We had a few developers and a person running kind of the operations. And we've stuck with that. So now we're a small team still. There's 3 full-time employees. And I'm in Chicago, one guy's in Denver, and we have a woman in California. Oh, cool. And we're small and, you know, we work from home. And when COVID happened, it's like the world caught up to us, you know?
Yeah. You were a trendsetter.
Yeah, we're a trendsetter.
And then that way too, if it's a nice day and you want to take off for an hour or two, you can just throw a leg over a bike and go. So.
Right. So because we're all over the country, we don't get a chance to really see each other or be with each other often. We're on the phone and we're in video conference all the time. Right. So I try to get people together every year or two just to go riding, spend a few days. Yeah. And we did it up in the Driftless area. And so we all got bikes, we rode, we rented an Airbnb, a cabin for a few days. It was really cool.
Nice. So, back to the company and kind of the experience. How do you go about renting a well, let's back up a little bit. How do you even approach somebody to say, hey, would you ever think about renting your motorcycle? Like, what was the first impression you got when you started reaching out to people?
When I was first starting the company, I actually went to a mechanic that I had been using and said to him, hey, I'm thinking about starting this company. And his response was, Austin, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard in my life.
Wow. Seriously.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but what we had to do was, we built up a lot of, awareness before we went live with the company. So we had ads and a splash page. Splash page is just one page where you say, hey, we're coming. This is what's going on. They can give me their email address. Sure. We started sending out, we had Instagram posts and weekly emails to our community before we even launched. And then when it was time to launch, we did it in 2 phases. The first phase was where you could only go on the website to list your motorcycle or to create a profile. You couldn't see any of the other bikes that were there and you couldn't rent. And the reason we did that is if we just started it all at once, the first person on the site would be like, all right, should I list my bike? Well, there's no other bikes here. Right. I'm not going to be the first person to list a bike.
I don't want to be the guinea pig. Right. Yeah.
And the first person to rent would go there and they'd see no bikes. So we did it and we phased it. And I remember going live, my family and I was taking the kids and my wife to Europe. And, we went live to have I think it was the motorcycle listings where you could list your bike while we were there. And there were issues with the website and I was spending all this money on advertising every day to get those bikes up there and let people know. Yeah. And I just remember being really, 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 really pissed.
Yeah, you spend all the money and the effort to get it done. It's not working. Right.
I was spending at the time just to get bikes on the site. I was spending $500 a day in advertising.
Oh, geez, yeah.
And I remember thinking, oh my God, like this is broken and people can't list a bike. I was so livid. Like that money's just gone. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously it worked out. You said you have somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 people now. Yeah, something
like that. Yeah.
And it's all kinds of bikes, right? It's not new bikes or not necessarily old bikes. It's all different
everything.
kinds.
We've got some I don't think we have any 24s yet. The 24s haven't come out, but plenty of 2023s. We have some really old bikes on there. And we have every brand from Harley to Ducati and Triumph. We've got Urals with sidecars. Like we've got everything.
Yeah. What's been maybe the coolest bike or the most exotic bike or maybe like a dream bike that you've had that somebody's listed that you've come across?
You know, it's really hard to tell because some of these bikes, like we have some really, really, really cool custom bikes. There was this really awesome, I don't know if it's still on our site or not, but there was this really awesome custom bike that I think was in Utah, and you can look online for the Womp Rat, and it was a really slick thing, but I don't know if it's still on the site or not. But more than the bikes that are interesting to me are the locations. So like I'm thinking, oh, okay, if I go to, or when I go to Alaska, I know I'll take a BMW adventure bike,
sure.
You know, and we've got them all over the place up there. Or when I go to Yellowstone, there's someone there with a handful of bikes that are in the Yellowstone area. So for me, it's more about thinking, where am I going to ride one day and what bikes am I going to take? We've got the ability to create wish lists just like any other. So you could save your exciting bikes to create a folder and save them.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So you can go, like, if you want to ride PCH in California or something, you can say, I want to do it on a cafe racer or a cruiser or whatever.
And maybe now's not the time, right? So you say, oh my God, there's a really cool bike here. Maybe I'll rent this Road King. And then you just save it to your folder. And then in a year or two, when you're ready to take that trip, all the bikes that you're saving are going to be there. Yeah. You can have 10 bikes for the PCH. You can have 10 bikes for, 20 bikes for a cross country trip, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, for sure.
You can label them however you want.
Sure. Yeah. What's kind of been the feedback? Obviously you're helping people kind of ride in those dream places. What do people have to say after they get back from their trips?
Well, we're really lucky that, people love the experience, and we see a lot of posts on Instagram that they're posting and thanking us, which always baffles me because like, I don't remember buying a Coke and saying, thank you, Coca-Cola, for this delicious beverage and posting it on Instagram. But they're basically thanking us and this community for putting it all together.
Yeah, for sure.
Our reviews are exceptional. They're like 97 or 98%, 5-star.
Oh, wow.
People who are not happy are two types of people. One, they might have dropped a bike and don't like that they have to pay a small deductible.
Sure.
Or the other thing is some people don't pass our rider screen and then they're angry about that. So, but besides those people, everyone else is a 5-star. One feature we started realizing after we started that people obviously are going to take cool pictures of their bikes.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We'd ask them to send them to us, and then every now and then we'd post them on Instagram. And what we started doing more recently, a couple of years ago, is when you are asked after the ride's over to put a review in, we also ask you to upload pictures of the bike or of your experience.
Yeah.
So every day, there's a bunch of reviews that we look at and we have to approve them before they go in. So when you look at a bike, not only can you see the bike and the reviews, but you can also see images of where the bike has been. It's kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
It's really cool as you're going through it. And we get, I think that I've only rejected one or two pictures and they're like, someone took a picture of their foot, by mistake. They're nothing. We haven't gotten anything explicit, but at one point, the first random picture I got was some guy's steak in a restaurant. And I'm like, what do I do with this? I'm like, you know what? He thought he was happy with the steak. I'm going to put it on there. So there's
part
a
of the experience,
That's
man.
Right.
Why
so
not?
we got the steak on there too.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of the rider screen. Obviously, renting a motorcycle, I'd say there's probably a little bit more responsibility than renting a car.
Yeah, a lot
especially
more.
when you're renting somebody's kind of personal vehicle.
Right.
So you mentioned the rider screen a little bit. Can you tell me about that and all the process that everybody goes through? Yeah,
we pay a lot of money for this, and there's not another company that does as thorough of a screen as we do. But after somebody puts in their basically their riding experience, what bikes they've ridden, a little bit about themselves, they have to upload their driver's license front and back, and they have to take a selfie. And once that's done, all that goes to our insurance company, and our insurance company does a thorough screening.
Oh, wow.
And they look at 15 points to make their decision. Some of them are how risky you are on the road.
Sure.
Some of them are, do you have a history of felonies?
Okay.
They look at that. They look at if you're on the federal watch list for suspected terrorism.
Oh, wow.
You can't ride with us.
There's like a no ride list. It's kind of like a no fly list. Okay. Yeah. So it's a little bit more than just like speeding tickets and accidents and stuff like that. And even
speeding tickets, like we know that you're going to get a speeding ticket. So they look at a combination of like age, number of speeding tickets, and recency. So let's say you're 24 and you had one really fast speeding ticket in the last 6 months, you're not riding.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe if you're 30 and you've had 2 in the last 3 years, you can ride.
Right,
so those criteria change.
Okay. So you have to meet some certain criteria in order to be a renter even.
In order to be a renter.
Yeah.
Because for us, like if we let everybody ride, we're taking on a significant amount of risk.
Oh, for sure.
With stolen bikes, with accidents, with liability, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So we spent a fortune to get that done, but it's worth it right now.
Yeah, it's a little bit different than maybe at a dealership perspective where, so my dad used to work at bike dealerships here and there.
Yep.
And I remember he said, technically, legally, you didn't need a license, a motorcycle endorsement to buy a motorcycle from a dealer. And some people would just want to ride at home and they can't do anything about it.
Yep.
It's out of their hands. And what they'll do is the customer will jump on the bike and rip the throttle and then tip it back, fall over, and then it'll go right back into service.
Yep.
And I can't even imagine dealing with that.
Yeah.
On a daily
we make
basis,
sure that they have their endorsement. They have to have an endorsement to ride with us. We try to be understanding. Like if you got arrested for stealing a 6-pack of Bud Light from the Circle K 5 years ago, we don't give a
Yeah.
But if you have a history of breaking and entering in the last year, like you're not riding with us. There's some red
kind of
flags.
felonious activity, motorcycle theft, maybe. I'm sure some big red flag.
We have this list of things that are like big no's, like the red flag. And then after that, we get into things that are more gray areas. Mm-hmm. So the way it kind of works is there are red flags. And if you have a red flag, you don't ride. But there's also a bunch of yellow flags. And if you get a certain number of yellow flags, you don't ride. So there's all these things that interplay.
So it's more than just like, yep, you're good to go. And it's a little more complex.
Yeah. A lot of dealers don't offer test rides. And those that do are just like, follow this guy. We're going to escort you.
Okay. Yeah.
And all they ask for is a copy of your driver's license and you sign a waiver. It's like, it's so limited what they do. They're like not checking anything. The license you hand them could have been suspended.
Yeah, or revoked or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of risk they're taking on by just letting anyone that they want ride as long as they have an endorsement.
Yeah. Do you talking about test rides, do you have a lot of people and renters who maybe like want to try a newer bike or a different bike, and then that's a way that they can try the motorcycle that they want to without going through a dealer or anything? Yeah,
sometimes we actually get requests. We got one a couple of yesterday for somebody who's like, I really want to ride a Super Duke KTM, and I'm looking for a certain model, and is there any way I can search your site to find out exactly where they all are? Because I'll fly there to try it before I buy, you know? So people use us for that for sure. And then we also have a feature on our site where if a lot of people are selling their bikes. So when you put your motorcycle on our site, you can say whether or not it's for sale. Okay. And then if it's for sale, how much? Yeah. And, it's right there on the website. So we don't make any money off that. It's just something we give the community. So
for sure.
If you're taking a bike out for rent, you want to buy it, you can buy it. There's people actually who told me, I've heard this story so many times, the rider goes out and rides it, comes back and makes an offer.
Oh, no way.
And they're like, dude, I'm not selling my bike.
Right.
Like, oh, I loved it. I'll just buy it from you. And we heard that enough. We added that other feature.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it's such a different experience. Like you said, you're on a standard motorcycle, I think, right? Yeah,
I was. Now I'm on something, I don't even know what you would call it, but I'm on a Moto Guzzi Griso. Do you know what that looks like?
Not off the top of my head, but
it's kind of a sporty classic, I guess you could say. So,
yeah. So it's like, but you start from one motorcycle, like let's say from, like a standard or an ADV bike or something. Then you go onto a big Harley, like a big bagger. And it's like, man, this is so comfortable. It's a whole different experience. Right. And so it doesn't surprise me that's like, you get that feeling of a new experience and all that. And they want to take that home with them.
Well, test riding is so much more important than test driving.
Oh, for sure.
And a lot of dealers don't offer test rides. And like I said before, if they do, it's a limited one. So, we fill a little bit of that gap as well.
Yeah.
Like, for example, let's say somebody wanted to buy a live wire, a Harley live wire.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. It's like a $30,000 bike. So you could like, what I would do is if I were you, is I would get on a plane, find one on our site, rent it for a day or two, see if you really like it. 'Cause it's going to ride so much differently than a standard bike with gasoline carbureted, and then fly home. And you'll spend a few $100 to fly and rent and then fly home. But you'll know whether or not it's the right bike for you. Yeah. For $30,000, you don't want to make a $30,000 mistake. It's kind of like a few $100 insurance policy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a kind of an ounce of prevention.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to a pound of cure trying to sell a bike that you just bought.
I know.
And all that. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So obviously founding the company, have you taken advantage of a lot of the bikes out there to rent?
I do. Whenever I travel, I pick up a bike.
Okay.
And I looked recently, and I think I've rented maybe 18 or 20 times or something. So you can see all the history of the bikes I've ridden.
Yeah. And they've been all over the place, kind of?
Yeah, they're all over the place. I got one of the cooler rides I did was I had to be in Vegas for a trade show.
Okay.
And, I'm here. So I'm like, well, do I ride to Vegas? I'm like, well, the ride to Denver. Once you get to Denver, it's really cool. But up until then, it's flat and straight.
There's not much going on.
There's not much there.
Yeah.
So what I decided to do was I flew to Denver.
Okay.
I rented a Tiger.
Nice.
And
Okay.
then I rode to Vegas over the course of like 4 or 5 days, did my trade show, and then I rode back a different route.
Okay.
So when you think about like going somewhere, taking a vacation or traveling for work, you're always like, okay, well, I got to be in Seattle. I'm going to get a hotel, a car, and a plane to Seattle. But there's a different paradigm when you're riding, because what you could do is you could extend that trip by a few days, and instead you fly into Portland, you rent a bike in Portland, you ride to Seattle, and then you ride back at the end of your time there.
Sure.
Had a few days, and now you're making a whole different experience of it.
Yeah. Yeah. You get to take advantage of doing something kind of on either side almost. You almost get to kind of pad the trip if you do it that way on either side to prepare and then maybe decompress after a stressful work trip or whatever. Because traveling for work is fun, but until it's not.
We have some riders that come. We have one I can remember now from Europe, and every time he comes, it's a work trip, and he always rents a bike from us. And we have to give an invoice of his ride so that he can submit it in his expense report.
Nice.
But there are people who do that. They rent from us instead of riding a car.
So where's maybe your favorite place that you've ridden lately, or just kind of the one trip that lives in your mind rent free all the time?
Wow. That Denver to Vegas one was a really, I can think of 3. Like I've taken 4 solo rides if I remember right, and each one of those was memorable. So one of them, the first overnight trip I ever took was a solo ride, and I was gone for I think a little bit more than 2 weeks.
Oh wow, okay.
And I had been riding for like 9 months or something like that.
So you just sent it.
I'm like, I'm gone.
Gotta go. Yeah. Okay.
And that one I rode south from Chicago through St. Louis. Then I went to like Tennessee, and then I went east. I stopped at the Barber Museum. Then I went to Atlanta. Then I went up the Blue Ridge Parkway to DC and took it back west. So that was like a 3,000 mile ride. That was a great one.
Yeah.
My first solo. It was really good. It was on that trip that I decided that I was going to start this. I had been wavering between finding another job as a CEO somewhere and starting this. And then I got the clarity when I was on that ride that that's what I have to do. I did the Denver to Vegas and back, and that was fun. There was a road in there that everybody should just check out. It's called the Moki Dugway, M-O-K-I. Have you been?
I've not. No.
It's like one of those It's one of those roads that is just switchback after switchback, and it's all. I think it's all gravel, or it might be packed gravel, or maybe it's asphalt. I can't remember, but it's really, really cool. So I rode that. That was neat. I've done the PCH. Those are the ones I can remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So speaking of roads and trying to find good roads, when you go somewhere new, maybe you've never even been there before, right?
Yeah.
How do you go about, like you personally, or just advice that you've picked up to find those good roads to travel?
Well, what I typically do is I'll I'll look on like the Rever app.
Okay, yeah.
Or I'll sometimes buy Butler Maps, which I think that Rever now owns Butler Maps. Have you ever seen those Butler Maps?
Yeah. The motorcycle kind of based maps about what roads are good or not.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I did that when I took my first trip. It took me on I took this random route and it was so amazing. It was isolated. I was going through the woods and I was the only one there. I didn't see a car for like 10 minutes or 15 minutes. So, but I tend to look at Butler. I tend to go to Rever. And then I also do a search online for whatever else I could find.
Okay. So the information is out there. You don't have to necessarily discover it all on your own.
Right. It is out there.
Yeah.
It is out there.
Yeah. I mean, I think we're spoiled nowadays because you can go online or you have apps and GPS and stuff. I remember just reading from stuff back in the day, the 70s and the 80s, where they just had an atlas or a map and then they just figured it out, and just a different world,
We have a bunch of pages on, like we call them the location pages on our site. So there's a Vegas one, there's a Honolulu, there's LA, all the kind of more popular destinations. Or we have a page for each one. And in those, we talk about cool places to eat, cool sights to see, and cool roads. So like if you're going to LA, you can pull up the LA one and I'll tell you, we have some roads mapped out there for you.
Cool. Yeah. We mentioned Hawaii, which I didn't even think about, but what's maybe is Hawaii maybe the most exotic place or the most kind of far out place
where we've got bikes?
Where you've got a bike, yeah.
It's either there or it's up in Alaska.
Okay.
The Alaska ones it's just really cool. It's really cool. The pictures we get back are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you made it up there to Alaska yet or?
It's on my list. There are 4 states I haven't been to in our country and Alaska's one of them.
Okay.
Alaska, North Dakota, Nebraska, and Mississippi, I think. Yeah. But I'm dying to get to Alaska. That's the one ride like I'd really, 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 really want to do is I want to ride Alaska.
Yeah, it seems just completely otherworldly,
right?
In the best way possible.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful roads, isolated. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you said you've rented, between 18 and 20 times just for yourself on the website.
Yeah, right.
For maybe somebody who hasn't ridden that much or has only ridden the bike that they have, what's some advice or tips that you have to when you throw your leg over a brand new motorcycle? It's, like I said, a little different than getting in a car,
It totally is. And it's I think the most important thing is to respect the bike. Mm-hmm. I rented an R18, a BMW R18 in Denver.
Yeah.
And I remember like getting on the bike and just where the center of gravity was and how it felt was just, I wasn't used to it. And I just took it into a parking lot and spent 30 minutes just riding around and turns. And so, yeah. And then something that sounds really stupid, but it's worth repeating is that you should just spend a few minutes seeing where the friction zone is, because you can get on a bike and go 30 feet and you're going to go turn out of the guy's driveway and put it in first or so whatever. And you can't find it or you stall out. It just takes that's like the first place I would start is understanding the clutch.
Start slow, start small. And it's kind of funny. So, I'd been riding for a while. I've been riding since I was 17. So it had been about 6 years or so. And my dad was like, hey, let's rent a couple of Harleys. Let's go bomb around South Central Wisconsin for a couple of days. Yeah. No big deal. I was living down in Bloomington, Illinois at the time. And he's like, okay, after work, get up here. We'll go to the Harley shop. We'll get them. Everything will be good. So I take off work early, and I had only ridden a 400cc motorcycle by this point. Yeah. And he had rented himself an Electra Glide and me an Ultra Glide.
Okay, Jesus.
And I'm like, okay. And I'm 23 years old at this point or whatever. And I'm like, I got to take this thing at 5 o'clock through suburban rush hour traffic. Right. And it's a 700-800 pound motorcycle. Like, how the hell am I going to do this? Right. But you're right. It was just like, just take it slow, take it one stoplight at a time, figure out where that friction zone is. And then by the end of the second day, we were going around, flying around these country roads and quick turns on these big bikes. It's just, it doesn't take as long as you think.
It doesn't.
To get used to it, but it is important to start slow.
I rented this bike out in Long Beach, and it was a Road King, and it had ape hangers. I never had ridden with those either.
Yeah.
So I was just really petrified, and I remember like just getting on the bike, and then there's like the woman who rented it to me, like you kind of go like 10 feet out of her space, and then you have to take a quick left into this alley, and then you have to go down that and take a right and onto the street. And I remember being so scared that I'm going to drop this bike in front of this woman as I'm just trying to leave.
Yeah.
And I was really like, I got scared. I'd never ridden a big bike before. So I pulled over, I got a cup of coffee, and I just looked up articles on how to ride a big bike and what's different about it. And it was, like you said, like after a couple of days of it, I was lane splitting and comfortable.
Yeah.
And,
California for sure.
California.
So, yeah. And that's, I imagine, probably it's the best time when you're feeling the most comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Then you got to return it. And that's probably why you get so many people that make offers and stuff. Makes total sense.
Right.
So, have you noticed anything in common about, the people that rent or on either side of the equation that travel to rent a motorcycle, or people that list their motorcycles on Twisted Road? Yeah.
Well, so let's start with the people who ride and rent other people's bikes. There's 4 reasons why people would do that. Number 1 is you're traveling, you don't have your bike. Number 2, you don't own a bike.
Sure.
Maybe you don't own a bike, you want to go riding. Number 3 is you just want to ride something different. You're a diehard Harley guy, but Triumph Thruxton looks amazing. And if you were to buy it, you get so much from your friends, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, I just want to ride it.
It's a guilty pleasure almost. Yeah.
And then the 4th reason is to try before you buy and to test ride bikes. So we get all sorts of people in different ways that are interested in renting for those reasons. And what we heard a lot of at the very beginning is that we are the first time that people have rented. I think it was 75% of the people who had rented with us, we were the first time they'd ever rented a motorcycle.
Wow.
So we are creating a market, for people because it's not something, it was so hard to find before us that we're making it easier. And now people have a need to do it and an interest in doing it more. On the owner side's really interesting. The people who own bikes and put them on our site tend to be people who are really, really love their bikes and want to share them with people. And we get people who will go to they'll come to Chicago and they'll rent a bike and the guy will say, all right, here are these maps. You got to go to these places. Make sure you get a coffee at Lynette's Donuts. And they'll give all these landmarks and stuff. And then they just love seeing people ride their bikes. There's a guy who's a really avid bike owner on our site in the Chicago area. He's got 2 or 3 bikes. And at one point, somebody had taken he was talking about how many miles were put on he has a GSA 1250.
Okay.
And it's all the miles and he just had to replace the tires. I'm like, what do you think? Are you making good money off this? I assume. He goes, dude, I don't even care if I make money off this. I just love, it's paying for the maintenance. It's paying for tires and everything I got to put on every now and then. And if people are just enjoying it, it's fine. Go do it.
Yeah. So, that's super cool.
Yeah.
So they're passionate about sharing, like you said.
They're passionate about sharing
the motorcycle experience.
And the experience. Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool, man.
We have a cool referral program where if you refer a friend and they ride with us, you get $25 to use towards your next ride.
Oh, cool.
So that works really well. They get a free day out of it or 20% off depending on certain criteria. And the other thing we have that's really cool is we have this program called 1-2 Free, which I'm really proud of. After you've rented 2 times, we give you a free day of riding.
Oh, nice.
So,
okay.
You rent the first time and you're one more ride away from getting your free day.
Yeah.
After your free day, you can do it. You can keep going. They just reset it like getting a sandwich at the sandwich shop. So there are people who have ridden now 15, 20 times with us in the past year, and every third ride they have a free day in there.
That's cool.
And I'm going to tell you how to game the system now. So the way to game the system is you have to sign up. It automatically gives you these days. Okay. But the way to really game it is to take 2 rentals of really, really inexpensive bikes, and then for your free one, take something that's you can't afford.
Okay. Yeah.
Because you're getting you might get $200 off or $250 off on that third bike.
Yeah, you may as well. It's like a sandwich shop. You're going to get the mega sandwich on your free sandwich.
6 foot long.
Yeah, exactly. So what in your motorcycle journey? I guess what's next? What's the next trip you got planned? I know you said you want to go to Alaska, but do you have one kind of coming up on the horizon?
I don't have a trip planned, and I was taking a solo trip every year. And I slowed that down around COVID, but I I really need to take a motorcycle trip, and I don't know where I'm going to go yet.
Yeah.
I really don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe the Pacific Northwest. Maybe
it's a cool spot.
Yeah.
It's a cool
but
spot.
I haven't thought about it.
Yeah.
I just haven't. I've been distracted with other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Too busy making more people rent list their motorcycles. Yeah, for sure. Do you have any motorcycle heroes as you've kind of gotten into bikes and anything that come to mind?
You know, I'll say something that's kind of corny, but when I was growing up, there was a lot of social pressure in our community to, and I'll just say the words that were used were get good grades, go to a good school, and be successful.
Yeah.
And so all of that's pretty arbitrary. Like, what the hell is a good school? Like,
right.
for it tend to be one that has a little bit more status. And then what is success? So success is in the way it was defined as I was growing up is making a lot of money. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the way that I think a lot of our world works is get to a college where you can get a good job and make a lot of money. And when I was in the community after a year or so, or I went down to a motorcycle event, and there were all these custom bikes. And afterwards I got to meet, I was in Texas and met one of these guys who went to his trailer where he lived, and his shop was right there. And all I thought is, this guy is like, he's so happy. He's so happy. He didn't go to college. He probably was the guy who was made fun of for being in shop class, in high school.
Yeah.
And yet this person has figured out a way to do something that they really love. So when I look at the community, you ask about heroes. I don't really have heroes, but I have a lot of, I admire the builders a lot, especially those who do it full time, just because they're so passionate and so creative that they can just do that.
So it sounds like motorcycling really has almost kind of changed the way you look at life.
100%, 100%. And we've got 2 kids. And like I remember saying to the kids, like, you don't have to go to college. College isn't for everyone.
Sure.
If that's not your path, that's okay.
Yeah,
We'll support you, whatever you decide to do. Because I feel like the longer I've been out, like, I just don't think it's the right path for everyone. Yeah. And, so I've changed my mind a lot about that. It used to be a lot different.
Yeah. Have your kids expressed interest in riding?
My wife's already told me that they're not a lot on the bike.
Okay.
Like, point blank. My son has no interest, which is good because he's a horrible driver. And our daughter, hasn't really expressed interest, I think, because my wife has said that they're not getting on the bikes.
So the rule's just been set from the get-go.
Yeah, but I did promise her that before she graduates from high school, I'll put her on a bike and I'll ride her to school and drop her off.
There you go.
So she's the rebel. She'll want to do it, I think, but hasn't really expressed a lot of interest specifically about that because she knows the rules so firm.
Gotcha. Well, Austin, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciated the time.
Of course.
How can folks get a hold of you? Obviously, they can go to twistedroad.com.
Yep.
How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. If anyone needs to contact me for any questions or anything, just you can email me directly at austin@twistedroad.com. General questions, you can email us, info@twistedroad.com. You could text us. We have a text line that's always open and real people behind it. That's 773-830-3532. You can find us on Instagram. There's any way that you think you can contact us, just try it and we will be responsive. Yeah, but go to Twisted Road. And if you haven't ridden with us yet, go to twistedroad.com/ref/twisted. twistedroad.com/ref/twisted. And there's a deal on there for your first day of riding is free.
Oh, wow. Cool, man. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Cool.
And
it's great being here.
Hopefully, I can take a trip one of these days and jump on a bike. So,
absolutely.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be here.
All right. Thanks, man.
You got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Driven to Ride. Interact with us and check out full unedited conversations, photos, interviews, video interviews, plus other goodies on YouTube or Instagram at Driven to Ride Podcast. Or you can check us out at driventoridepodcast.com. And make sure you leave us a rating and review from wherever you get your podcasts too. If you have an idea for an episode or a guest, or you want to invite us out on an adventure, email us hello@driventoridepodcast.com. Driven to Ride is wholly owned by Flint Rock LLC, made possible with help from Matthew Miles, and written, hosted, and produced by me, Mark Long.